There is something that most people never fully understand about the nature of time, and it is this. Time is not a wall that separates you from what you desire. Time is a mirror. It reflects back to you not the calendar on your wall, not the days that have passed or the days yet to come, but the state of consciousness you are living in right now. And when you truly grasp this, when it moves from your intellect into your bones, into the marrow of your spiritual understanding, something extraordinary begins to happen. The gap between where you are and where you want to be does not shrink slowly, the way people expect it to. It collapses entirely, all at once. Understand this. You have been taught from your earliest years that time moves in one direction, that cause precedes effect, that you must work, wait, and eventually receive, that there is a sequence to things, a queue, a proper order that must be respected. And so you have spent your life standing in that queue, watching the clock, asking when, wondering why it hasn't happened yet, measuring the distance between your current reality and your desired reality with a measuring tape made of worry and impatience. But what if that entire framework was the very thing blocking you? What if the queue doesn't exist? What if time, as you experience it, is simply a projection of the state you are choosing to inhabit? This is not a new idea. It is ancient. It is woven through every mystical tradition, every esoteric teaching, every sacred text that has survived the centuries. But no one made it as precise, as practical, as personally accessible as Neville Goddard. And what Neville understood with a clarity that bordered on divine revelation was that the imagination does not operate within time. Consciousness does not live in the future. It does not remember the past. It only ever knows one tense, and that tense is now. This is why the method you are about to understand is not a trick or a technique. It is in alignment with the deepest truth of how reality is actually constructed. Let that sink into your spirit for a moment. Your imagination only knows now. The feeling of having something, the emotional reality of a wish fulfilled, the inner knowing that something is already done, these do not belong to future time. They are available to you in this breath, in this moment, right now. And because the subconscious mind, which is the creative medium between your inner state and your outer world, does not distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is physically experienced, the moment you shift your inner state into the feeling of already having, already being, already living the life you desire, you have already begun collapsing the distance between imagination and manifestation. Think about this for a moment. When something wonderful happened to you in the past, how did it feel the day after? Not days later, not weeks later, but the very next morning when you woke up and remembered, it's done. That conversation went well, that opportunity came through, that relationship shifted, that thing you wanted finally happened. Remember that feeling, that settled quality, that ease. The world looked the same, the sun rose in the same direction, traffic moved the way it always does. But inside you, something was different. There was a lightness, a quiet confidence, a gentle satisfaction that had nothing to do with excitement or desperation, but everything to do with completion. You were not reaching for anything. You were living in the aftermath of something good. That feeling, that precise emotional signature is the key. It is the frequency you are trying to tune to. Not the feeling of wanting, not the feeling of hoping, not even the feeling of believing it might happen one day. The feeling that it happened, that it's done, that yesterday, in whatever version of your story is most natural to you, the thing was completed. The call came, the diagnosis changed, the money arrived, the person showed up, the door opened, and today you are simply someone who knows what already happened, carrying that knowledge gently, the way you carry any settled truth about your life. This is what Neville called living in the end. And people often misunderstand this phrase. They hear it as a kind of performance, a mental act of pretending, a daily ritual of forcing yourself to smile while secretly feeling lack. That is not it. That is the opposite of it. Living in the end is not a performance. It is a residence. It is choosing to locate your sense of self, your felt experience of who you are, not in the problem, not in the lack, not in the question of when, but in the identity of someone for whom the thing is already done. The performance fades, the residence stays, and it is the residence, the sustained inner state that reshapes external reality. Allow yourself to see the difference. When you are performing, you are outside the state looking in. You are trying to believe. You are pushing. You are efforting. You feel the gap between what you are and what you want to be, and you are trying to paper over it with affirmations and visualization exercises that feel more like wishes thrown at a sky that never responds. But when you are residing, when you have moved into the state the way you move into a new home, arranging your furniture, learning the light, feeling where the warmth comes from, that is when things begin to move. Not because you are forcing them, because you have changed. And when you change at the level of identity, reality reorganizes itself around the new you. It has no other choice. You must realize that the subconscious mind is not impressed by what you declare. It is shaped by what you assume. There is a profound difference. Declarations are surface level. They live in the conscious mind. They are the words you say to yourself in the mirror, the intentions you set on New Year's morning, the vision board you made with careful optimism. And none of these are wrong, but they remain in the realm of reaching unless they are anchored to something deeper, which is assumption. An assumption is not a thought, it is a state of being. It is what you have accepted as true without needing to argue it any further. It is the settled belief beneath the level of language that quietly organizes everything you perceive, every opportunity you notice, every choice you make, every door you walk toward, and every door you walk past. Feel this deeply. Every assumption you carry about yourself and your life is currently generating your experience. The assumption that money is hard to come by is not a thought that occasionally floats across your mind. It is a lens through which you see every financial situation in your life. The assumption that love is unavailable to you or that you are somehow unworthy of a deep and fulfilling partnership is not a theory. It is a filter that shapes every interaction, every glance, every conversation with another soul. The assumption that your body cannot heal, that circumstances cannot change, that God or the universe or life itself has somehow overlooked you, these are not neutral observations. They are creative instructions being fed continuously to the most powerful force in the known universe, which is your own consciousness. And here is where the time collapse becomes relevant in a way that should awaken something in you. If assumptions are creative, and if the subconscious mind only operates in the eternal present, then the fastest way to change your assumption is not to argue with it through logical analysis or to fight it through willpower. The fastest way is to give the subconscious mind a new emotional memory, a new reference point, a moment from the recent past, specifically from yesterday, in which the thing you desire already happened. Not in the distant future, not in some vague someday. Yesterday it happened. You woke up today already knowing. Notice what happens when you make that shift. When you say to yourself, not with performance, but with the quiet authority of someone relocating their identity, this already happened. The emotional texture of the desire changes immediately. The desperation dissolves. The timeline anxiety releases. The constant monitoring of signs and synchronicities begins to lose its urgency. Because you are not waiting for proof anymore. You are someone who already has the proof. You are someone for whom the thing is finished. And that quality of completeness, that absolute absence of lack, is precisely the vibrational state that the outer world recognizes and responds to. Consider this. In the Gospel of Mark, there is a verse that most people read quickly, not fully understanding the depth of what is being transmitted. Jesus says, "Therefore I tell you, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. Not believe that you will receive it, not believe that you might receive it if you pray hard enough, if you are worthy enough, if conditions align. Believe that you have received it, past tense, already done." The instruction is not a future orientation, it is a past orientation. The prayer is not a petition sent toward a distant God who will someday respond. The prayer is a declaration of completion. The faith that moves mountains is not hope projected forward, it is certainty anchored in the present, informed by a memory of having already received. This is the method. It is not complicated, but it requires something that is rarer than most techniques demand, and that is genuine emotional honesty combined with sovereign inner authority. You cannot fake your way into this. You cannot perform your way into this. You have to actually find the feeling, the real cellular embodied feeling of someone who knows something good already happened. And to find it, you may need to spend time with it. You may need to sit quietly, close your eyes, and actually place yourself in the scene of the morning after. Walk through it in your imagination, not from a distance, not as an observer, but from the inside. You, in your body, waking up to a day in which the thing is already done. Imagine for a moment what that morning would look like. You open your eyes. There is something quiet in you, something that is not excitement precisely, but is more like the warmth of certainty. You remember. The call came yesterday. The doctor called with a different report. The offer was accepted. The message came through. The shift happened. And now it is the morning after, and you are carrying that knowledge the way you carry any settled truth. You make coffee or you don't. You look out the window at the sky. And the world looks ordinary, unremarkably ordinary, because profound things almost always feel ordinary once they've happened. The drama belongs to the waiting, not to the having. Let that sink into your spirit. The drama belongs to the waiting, not to the having. This is why so many people never actually arrive at what they desire. They are attached to the drama of the journey, to the emotional turbulence of not yet having, to the story of the seeker, the one who is on the way. They have built an identity around pursuing, and the pursuit has become more familiar than the arrival. But you are being invited, right now, to dissolve that identity and replace it with something quieter and infinitely more powerful. The identity of someone who has arrived, not someone who is arriving, not someone who will arrive, someone who arrived yesterday and who is today living in the grace of that completion. You are not someone who is waiting for your health to improve. You are someone who received good news yesterday. You are not someone who is hoping love will come. You are someone who has already felt the warmth of being chosen, and you are carrying that warmth into this morning. You are not someone who is trying to become financially free. You are someone for whom the financial pressure released, and now you are in the ease of the day after. The day when you wake up and the weight is simply not there anymore. This is why Neville so often spoke of the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Not the visualization alone, not the mental picture, but the feeling, the emotional state, the cellular experience of what it is like to be someone on the other side. Because that feeling is not a byproduct of manifestation. That feeling is the cause. The physical reality that materializes in your life is the effect of the inner reality you sustain. Change the inner reality and the outer must follow. This is not metaphor. This is the mechanics of consciousness operating precisely as it was designed to. Think about this for a moment. You already do this naturally with negative assumptions. You already practice the time collapse method in reverse, unconsciously. You wake up dreading the day, not because the day has happened yet, but because you have already run the memory of how days like this go. You have already assumed the outcome. You have already felt the feeling of things going wrong, of the conversation being difficult, of the opportunity not working out. And then you go out into the day with that emotional signature broadcasting from every cell in your body, and you find, almost without exception, that the day confirms exactly what you assumed. Not because the universe is cruel, because you are creative, because your consciousness is so powerful that it cannot help but organize reality around its most deeply held assumptions. So you already do this. The only question is whether you are doing it deliberately or by default. Whether you are consciously choosing the memory you are carrying into the morning, or whether you are letting old patterns, old stories, old wounds choose it for you. The method is not new to your nervous system. Your nervous system already knows how to live in the emotional aftermath of something. It simply needs to be redirected, given a new event, a new yesterday, a new piece of completed history to carry. This is why the practice is sometimes called revision. Neville taught revision as one of the most powerful tools available to a person who wants to transform their experience. The practice of going back through the events of your day before sleep and rewriting them in imagination to reflect the outcome you desired. Not as a coping mechanism, not as a way of lying to yourself, but as a genuine act of creative authority, understanding that the subconscious mind does not timestamp its impressions. It does not file experiences by date. It simply holds them as emotional realities, and emotional realities are what it uses to construct your perception of what is possible and what is not. When you revise, you are not changing what happened in the so-called objective past. You are changing what is registered in your subjective experience. You are editing the emotional record. And because that emotional record is what informs your assumption, and because your assumption is what generates your experience, the revision becomes causally real. It enters the chain of creation as an actual influence. This is not magical thinking. This is an understanding of how the subjective and objective are related, which is not in the way most people believe, with the objective being primary and the subjective being secondary, but precisely the opposite. The subjective is primary. Consciousness is primary. The outer world is the shadow of the inner. Feel this deeply. You are not in a world that is happening to you. You are in a world that is happening through you, as a consequence of what you are being, feeling, and assuming at the level below language, below performance, below the face you show the world. The truest thing about you right now is not your name, not your age, not your circumstances, not your credit score, not your relationship status, not your diagnosis. The truest thing about you is the assumption you are carrying in your depths, the quiet belief about what is and what is not possible for you. And that can be changed. It can be changed in a single evening of sincere, emotionally honest, imaginative revision. It can be changed in the space between waking and sleep, in that liminal territory where the conscious mind relaxes its grip and the deeper layers become receptive. Consider this for a moment. Why does Neville specifically instruct that the practice be done at the threshold of sleep? Why is that the moment? Because that is the moment when your rational mind, your doubting mind, the mind that argues with everything, the mind that says, this is not realistic, that is not how things work, that keeps track of all the evidence for limitation, quiets down. In that drowsy, receptive state, just before sleep takes you, the subconscious is extraordinarily open. It receives whatever impression you give it with unusual depth and permanence. And if you give it the impression of completion, of yesterday's good news, of the emotional signature of someone who already has what they desired, That impression sinks down into the creative medium and begins its work without interference from your doubting conscious mind. The ancients knew this. Every culture that has explored the inner dimensions of human experience has pointed to the threshold of sleep as a moment of particular power, a liminal crossing where the ego dissolves enough that deeper instructions can be given and received. You are not practicing something foreign when you work with this threshold. You are practicing something ancient, something embedded in the design of consciousness itself, something that was always available to you, waiting only for your attention and your willingness to work with it deliberately. Notice what happens when you do this consistently. It is not that the world suddenly transforms overnight, though sometimes, in ways that can only be called miraculous, it does. It is more that you begin to notice a different quality to the day, a different quality to your interactions, a different quality to the thoughts that arise spontaneously in your mind. Because the subconscious, once given a new assumption, begins to quietly reorganize the way you perceive things. Opportunities that were always present but invisible to you begin to become visible. People who could help you somehow come into proximity. Your own behaviors shift in small ways that accumulate into large changes. You make a different call. You take a different route. You say yes when you would have said no, or no when you would have said yes. And the outer world, responding to the changed inner world, begins to rearrange itself. This is the principle of least effort meeting the principle of infinite power. You are not forcing anything. You are not controlling the mechanism. You are not managing the how. You are simply changing the what of your inner experience, the what of your emotional assumption, and then you release it. You go about your day. You live as someone who knows. And the universe, which is nothing other than consciousness itself in its infinite creative expression, arranges the details. Let this settle within you. The how is not your business. This is one of the places where most people stumble. They accept, intellectually, the idea that consciousness creates reality. They do the practice, genuinely, with sincere emotional investment. And then they immediately pick up their worry again and start trying to figure out the mechanism. How will this come about? Through what person? By what means? On what timeline? And in doing so, they reintroduce the very doubt they had just transcended. They take back the creative authority they had just claimed. They return to the identity of the one who needs to control the outcome, which is always, always, the identity of someone who does not fully trust the power of their own inner state. You are not the manager of the mechanism. You are the originator of the state. There is a divine intelligence built into the structure of consciousness itself, and it is infinitely more capable of arranging physical circumstances than your reasoning mind will ever be. Your job is to know. Your job is to assume. Your job is to live consistently and sincerely in the emotional aftermath of what you desire, and then to let go of the rest, not with false detachment, not with the performance of not caring, but with genuine trust, the kind of trust that arises naturally when you actually understand that the law of consciousness is as reliable as the law of gravity. Think about how you trust gravity. You do not check every morning to make sure the floor will hold you. You do not worry that the law might take a day off. You simply step out of bed and the floor is there. This is the quality of trust that Neville speaks about when he talks about faith. Not the desperate faith of someone hoping for a miracle, the relaxed, effortless faith of someone who knows how a law works and operates within it with confidence. When your faith in the creative power of your own consciousness reaches that quality, the practice becomes effortless. You are no longer working to manifest. You are simply being who you are, and manifestation is the natural consequence. You must realize that this is not arrogance. There is a kind of spiritual humility that has been confused with powerlessness, a belief that to claim your creative authority is somehow to overstep, to take something that is not yours, to presume upon a divine order that has not invited your participation. But this is a misunderstanding of the deepest magnitude. You were designed for this. The capacity for imagination, for inner vision, for the conscious construction of assumed realities. This is not a feature added to human consciousness by accident. It is the central gift. It is the image of God in which, as the scripture says, you were made. To be made in the image of God is not to resemble God in appearance. It is to share in God's nature, which is creative, which is conscious, which is the power to speak a word of inner reality and watch it externalize. When God speaks, in the symbolic language of Genesis, the world comes into being, and you, as an expression of that same consciousness, that same creative ground, speak your world into being through the word of your assumption. Every assumption you have ever made has been a word spoken into the medium of consciousness, and the world has responded, without exception. It has always responded. Every single thing in your current experience, without exception, is a crystallization of past assumptions. The relationships, the finances, the health, the patterns, the recurring themes, all of it is assumption made visible, which means that if you change the assumption, you change the crystallization. Allow yourself to see that this is not a burden, it is liberation. The understanding that you are the author of your experience is not a condemnation of your past, it is an invitation to your future. You were not wrong to have the assumptions you had. You absorbed them from your environment, from the beliefs of the people around you, from the collective consciousness of a world that has largely forgotten its own power. But now you know, and knowing changes everything. Because the moment you see the machinery clearly, you can engage with it consciously. You can sit down at the end of the day and revise. You can wake up in the morning and choose your yesterday. You can fall asleep in the feeling of completion. You can choose deliberately and repeatedly to be someone for whom the good has already arrived. This is why this method, the time collapse, the assumption of yesterday, is not about denying your current reality. It is about understanding that your current reality has no authority over what you choose to be inwardly. Your outer circumstances can say whatever they say. The bank account, the diagnosis, the relationship status, the circumstances at work, whatever they appear to be, those are effects. They are the crystallized residue of past assumptions. They are not prophecy. They are not permanent. They are not the final word. The final word belongs to you, to the assumption you are choosing to hold right now, in this moment, in the quiet interior where all creation begins. And when you choose to hold the assumption of completion, of yesterday's good news, of already having arrived, you are not in denial of what has been. You are in authority over what will be. There is a crucial difference. The person in denial says, "This hard thing is not happening." The person in creative authority says, "I see what appears to be here, and I am choosing to invest my creative energy not in amplifying it, but in the new reality I am assuming from the inside." One is avoidance, the other is mastery. One is trying to run from the present. The other is using the present as the only point of power that exists. The now in which all assumptions are available, in which all realities are possible, in which the entire creative potential of consciousness stands ready to respond to whatever you choose to be. Feel this. You are standing at the center of infinite possibility right now, not later, not when your circumstances change, not when you have more evidence that this works. Right now, in this moment, with everything exactly as it appears to be, you are at the center of infinite possibility because you are consciousness, and consciousness is infinite possibility in its very nature. Every desired reality, every healed relationship, every abundant circumstance, every expressed gift, every fulfilled longing, every version of you that you have ever dreamed of being, all of it exists as a possibility within the field of consciousness that you are. And the bridge between where you stand and where you wish to be is not time, it is not effort, it is not luck or favor or perfect conditions. It is assumption. It is the choice, made with emotional sincerity and inner authority, to be in your depths, someone for whom the beautiful thing is already true. And when you make that choice, when you genuinely inhabit the feeling of the morning after, when you allow yourself to know in the way that a person knows something that has already happened, the mechanism of consciousness begins its work. Not in a grand, dramatic, obvious way, usually in a quiet, ordinary, unmistakably real way. A thought arises that leads somewhere new. A person appears who has exactly what you need. A door that was closed opens without explanation. A circumstance that seemed immovable shifts without apparent cause. The movement begins from the inside, and it expresses on the outside with the organic intelligence of something that was always going to be, something that was simply waiting for you to stop blocking it with the assumption of its absence. This is the grace that is spoken of in the mystical traditions. Not something given to a chosen few, not something earned through perfect behavior or sufficient suffering. Grace is the natural movement of consciousness toward its own assumptions. When your assumption is lack, grace moves toward lack, because that is what consciousness is being. When your assumption is completion, when your assumption is that the good has already arrived, grace moves toward completion, effortlessly, naturally, as water finds its level. This is the inheritance that every teaching points to, the kingdom that is already yours, the treasure buried not in some external location, but in the field of your own consciousness. Available the moment you are willing to stop digging outside yourself and look within. You are not waiting for your life to begin. Your life is happening now, through you, as you. Every moment is both an expression of what you have been assuming and an invitation to assume something new. Every night is a revision opportunity. Every morning is a new yesterday to choose. Every breath is a threshold between the reality you have been living and the reality you are willing to inhabit. And the practice is simply this: choose, with honesty, with feeling, with the full weight of your creative self. Choose to be someone for whom the good is already done. Choose to carry into this morning the settled knowledge of someone who received their news yesterday. Choose to walk through this day not as someone hoping, not as someone trying, not as someone waiting, but as someone who knows. And then let it be. Let the intelligence that holds the planets in their courses, that breathes through every living thing, that spoke the world into being and sustains it in this breath and the next, let that intelligence arrange the how. Your only work is the what of your inner state, the what of your assumption, the what of the identity you are choosing to wear, not for the world but for yourself, in the quiet chambers of your own consciousness, where all creation begins and where all transformation is possible. This is the truth that sets you free. Not a distant truth, not a complicated truth, not a truth reserved for the spiritually advanced or the cosmically favored. This is the truth that is available to you in this moment, as simple and as profound as breathing. You are the operant power. Your consciousness is the creative cause. Your assumption is the word that shapes the world. And yesterday, in the story that your subconscious is now receiving, the beautiful thing happened. The call came, the shift occurred, the door opened, the word was spoken, the healing began, the love arrived, the abundance moved. It happened yesterday, and this morning you woke up already knowing. And that knowing is not something the world gave you. It is something you chose. It is the seed you planted in the soil of consciousness with the full authority of a being who was always, in the deepest truth of what you are, the creator of your own experience. Live there, return there, revise your way back to it whenever the noise of the outer world tries to pull you into the story of not yet. Because not yet is a story, and so is already. And you, in your sovereign creative power, in your divine inheritance, as a being of infinite consciousness, get to choose which story you tell. Choose already, choose done, choose the morning after the good news, choose yesterday as the day the thing happened, and watch, with the quiet confidence of someone who knows how this works, as the world faithfully, inevitably, with the precision of a law that has never once failed, rearranges itself to confirm what you have assumed.